Welcome students on this particular lecture number 4. So students, now in this case we are in that particular total income concept. So today we will try to wrap up on this total income concept family, and then we will be in a position to head to the next particular arena of our deliberation. Now students, in this particular context, as you would have seen in the last particular session, we were discussing primarily, I have already given you the entire background, the chargeabilities on the total income. Now, total income, students, be careful, has been defined under the Income Tax Act. And the way it has been defined, it means what? An income. And finally, what we have concluded from the last lecture? What is income from our last session? It is nothing but the revenue receipt plus the specified capital receipt. So that is what will be considered to be as your income. Now that income should fall within the scope of section number 5. That income should fall what, friends? Within the scope of section number 5. And accordingly, whatever which falls within the scope of section 5 is what will be taken further, is what students will be taken further for the purpose of the computation under the Act. Will be taken further for the purpose of the computation under the Act. And that exactly how, students, it has to be considered over here. So therefore, students, what we have said, in that case, there has to be an income. That income should fall within the scope of section 5, and whatever income which falls within the scope of section 5, only that income will be taken further for the purpose of the computation under the Act. Now students, now we come on our next particular part, which is B, which falls within the scope of section number 5. Right, point number B, which falls within the scope of section 5. Now students, this particular section is the most important particular discussion that we are now going to have it. When we say that income which falls within the scope of section, this will be one of the most important discussion, students, that we are going to have it right. Students, in the context of income tax law, every person is earning an income. So say for example, Bill Gates, just as an example, student, Bill Gates is also earning an income. So if he is earning an income, the question therefore to all of you is, does he make the payment of income tax in India? So he has got Microsoft Corporation, and now whatever is the amount that he earns from his Microsoft in USA, will he be making the payment of income tax in India? Or for that matter, just take into account, say for example, other than Bill Gates, any particular person, XYE of say Germany. He stays in Germany, works in Germany, earns in Germany. Will he be making payment of income tax in India? In this context, does he make the payment of income tax in India? What does that take that you have in this situation? So if you see the charging section, in the charging section, somebody who just randomly reads the charging section, they will say that, yes sir, what is chargeable is the total income of a person for the previous year will be charged to tax in the next following assessment year. So therefore, he is an individual, a person. His total income which he has earned in the previous year will be charged to tax in the assessment year. That is what people might say about it, isn't it? So again, coming back to this particular discussion, that whether his income will it be charged to tax under the Act. What is your take now, students, on this? So to that the answer is no, it cannot be. It cannot be taxed, students. And why is it so? In this context, so students, one thing which you have to be very careful about it. Now, the most important discussion that we are going to have, family. So there has to be, students, be careful. There is a concept of a Have you heard this particular term any time in your, say, articleship or up till now? Territorial What of this term in this context? So there has to be some sort of a nexus, a territorial nexus for the purpose of the chargeability. I'll explain how this particular concept, this is one of the most fundamental and the most core principle. In fact, I must tell to all of you, at least you would have heard this Supreme Court particular verdict in Vodafone case 2012, the most famous Supreme Court Vodafone judgment. This will definitely come in some few lectures from now when we will be doing non-resident taxation. Now in that NR taxation, this is what the Supreme Court finally have concluded. They have highlighted or they have emphasized upon the theory of what? The territorial nexus. So they have emphasized or highlighted on the theory of the territorial nexus, students. That is what they have done. So therefore the question to all of you is, what is this particular fundamental concept of the territorial nexus is what now we are supposed to learn this context. There has to be some sort of a nexus, students, with India. Only then the chargeability would be attracted. Now how this nexus has to be seen? Now say for example, in my example, when I gave you the example of Bill Gates, some Mr. ABC XYZ of Germany, in this context, when I was giving you that example, in that context, do they have any nexus with India? Are they a resident of India? Answer is no. In this context. So now if they are not a resident of India, they are a non-resident. So do they have any nexus with India vis-a-vis their income? Do they have any nexus with India vis-a-vis their income? Which implies that, did they earn that income in India? Or did they receive that income in India? One of the two has to be there so as to develop a nexus, a link, a bond with India. And unless that exists, they will not be subject to any charge under the Indian Income Tax Act 1960. Because there is no territorial nexus of either that person or their income. There is no territorial nexus either of that person or their income with India. And since no such nexus exists, that is the reason why. That is the reason why the chargeability will not be attracted at all. I hope that all of you are appreciating this finer discussion, which I am going to enlarge it when we discuss in our NR taxation. Now come to a resident person. Like for example, let us take my own example. Now students, I'm earning the income, say through online teaching and training. Now I am very much a resident in India in this context, isn't it? Now through my online lectures, there are many of my students who are also not only in India. There are some students who are actually taking the lectures who are based in Dubai, Abu Dhabi. Some students in South, many of them primarily who are actually working in there for whatever be the reason. So they are also the one who are taking my lectures. Now in that particular case, if you see, I am therefore have got an income which I am earning in India and therefore also earning outside India. Some of my income I am also earning outside India. So therefore the question to all of you is that, now you say that sir, world income is taxable. You only have learned the net result. But the most important thing that you should always think of it, students, you have to be a thinker. Why this has happened? Why is it that for a resident, the world income gets taxable? Why is it so? Because of the territorial nexus. If you recall, or if you would have very carefully would have listened to my remark which I have just made for that non-resident, what I told to you, the remark which I just made for that non-resident, I told to you at that point of time that the non-resident should either have a nexus, either the person should have the nexus, or their income should have a nexus with India. So in this particular example, the person, that is me, I am a resident in India, so the nexus is established. And the moment the nexus is established with the person, the moment the nexus is established with the person, then what happens? We don't see further. What is that? The world income therefore becomes taxable. The world income therefore will become taxable. Obviously, students, when you talk about an individual person, then there is a finer further refinement as R and OR, or resident and not ordinary resident, R and NOR. Those finer discussion we will do when we come to that particular part. But right now, only for this time being, to understand the threshold level, that if you happen to be a resident, now the person himself has an access with India. And the fact that the person itself has a territorial access, then we look no further. And what we conclude? The world income is taxable. So the nexus, students, should be either with the person, or if not with the person, then at least the income that the person has earned, that income should have the nexus with what? With India. So either the person should have the nexus with India, or if the person doesn't have the nexus with India, then the income that he has earned should have a nexus with India. Only then the chargeability will be attracted. Only then the chargeability, students, will be attracted. I hope that all of you are clear with this one. Every one of you. And that is exactly what the position is, students, in this regard. So with this, students, we are dealt with this very important particular part. Just put across this particular note. All of you. In this context, please write. Not all the income of a person not all the income of a person is chargeable to tax under the Act. It is only that income which falls within the scope of Section 5, that attracts the chargeability under the Act. So not all the income of a person is chargeable to tax under the Act. It is only that income which falls within the scope of Section 5 that attracts the chargeability under the Act. Right, further, students? The scope of chargeability is decided based upon the residential status of a person. So from this, in the next line, write like this. residential status. For non-resident students, what I'm writing? Income accrued or deemed to have accrued. What I'm writing here? Income accrued or deemed to have accrued. And here what I'm writing? Income received or deemed to have received. Fine, students. All of you through this one, students. So, students, in this particular context, I'll just dictate on that territorial nexus particular part so that at least the things are there in that particular order. I'll dictate it, students, you write it down. Give the next line, right? The concept of territorial nexus. The concept of territorial nexus. Underline this and in that write for the purpose of chargeability, for the purpose of chargeability under the Act, for the purpose of the chargeability under the Act. Comma, the one of the criteria, right? One of the criteria is the existence of the territorial nexus. Is the existence of the territorial nexus. Now, students, I must tell you what one mistake you people have done it. That's the reason why I'm deliberately dictating this, just to identify your mistakes. You know what you people have done it? What you have written, for the purpose of chargeability under the Act, isn't it? For the purpose of chargeability under the Act. And you people have written Act like this. For the purpose of chargeability under the Act. And your Act is written like this. Isn't it? Just check it out. And you will say, sir, how do you know that? I know it. I'm seeing your answer sheet. So your notebook, how you're writing it, visible to me right now. You people have written like this, which is absolutely an error. Be careful, students, on this particular part. Did you have noticed when I was making you write? Every time, whenever I'm using the word act, the letter A is always in capital. Letter A, students, is always in capital. Did you realize that, students, in this context? So what is the point? The point is this, that never ever make this blunder where the letter A of the Act is kept as a small letter. See, I'm telling you, students, you may have got the beautiful of your answers in your income tax law, or for that matter GST, or for that matter audit, or whatever it be. But the moment you write as per the Income Tax Act, and in that act you write A as a small letter, gone. Whatever is the beauty of your answer will be wiped out with this word that you have written with a small letter A. Never do that, students. Never ever do that. Irrespective whether the word act comes at the beginning or somewhere in middle or towards the end, the act, always A letter has to be in capital. Is that clear to all of you in this context? Fine. So this is one thing that you always will keep in mind. One more point, students, and that is more on the examination part. See, many students will ask, sir, do we have to write section numbers in our CA final? And the answer is yes, it's mandatory. You don't have any choice for that. You will have to write the section number, students, in this context. Primary. So section number needs to be written, students, in this examination. Okay, you'll say, but how you will run it? Don't worry. Everyone will, by the time of the end of the course, the number will get registered in your mind. Don't have to worry much on that. Point number 2. Students, like when you write, like for example, section number 5. So one of the other challenge or botheration of the students is that they write like as per section number 5 of the Income Tax Act 1961. Then in the next answer, as per section number 9 of the Income Tax Act 1961. And mind you, students, be careful. Direct tax paper, students, is always lengthy. DT paper, students, are always lengthy. And the fact that DT paper is always lengthy, that is the reason why you have to be careful now. And what is the care that you have to say? You have to be careful. Like in the first answer, students, just have a look how I'm writing. Like I've written like as per section 5 of, say my first answer. Huh? My first answer I'm writing like this. As per section 5 of the Income Tax Act. See how I'm writing. Of the Income Tax Act 1961. Now in the bracket I'm going to write like this. Hereinafter referred as an act. So what does it imply? That in all my subsequent answer, I am going to term the Income Tax Act 1961 as what? As act. So in my second particular answer, say for example, second answer I'm writing as per section 9 of the act. Then you can continue further, so on and so forth. And that's exactly how you're supposed to put it across, students. I hope that all of you are clear with this one now. Every one of you. So this is how, students, the things has to be looked upon as far as this particular proposition is concerned. So second particular point which I have made you write as per section 9 of the Act. So this is exactly what, students, you're going to put it across, and that is how the things has to be looked upon. Is that point clear to all of you? Everyone. So this is precisely the way we are going to deal with it in this regard. So now just continue further with your notes. Next line. The territorial nexus is either established. The territorial nexus is either established with the person. The territorial nexus is either established with the person, or if not with the person, or if not with the person, then the income which is earned by such person, then the income which is earned by such person. Full stop. Next line. Therefore, where a person is a resident, where a person is a resident, then the territorial nexus, is directly established is directly established with that person, and hence the world income of that person is chargeable to tax under the Act, and hence the world income of that person is chargeable to tax under the Act. Full stop. However, if the territorial nexus is not established with the person, then the chargeability under the Act will be restricted. The chargeability under the Act will be restricted only in respect to the income earned by such person which has which has a territorial nexus with India. A territorial nexus with India. Full stop. Therefore, the nexus is established. Therefore, the nexus is established only in respect of the income which is accrued in India, or the income which is received in India, or the income which is received in India, so far as a non-resident person is concerned. So far as a non-resident person is concerned. Full stop. So far as a non-resident person is concerned. Full stop. Okay. Students, this, when you have your notes, see, initial lectures as it has been there. These are the important things, students. I'm telling you one thing, and just trust me on this, and you yourself would have appreciated to make you explain this is not a difficult task. I have explained to you, you have understood also. But the most difficult task, do you know what it is? You have understood. Can you write it down now? That is the most difficult task. And 95% students fail in CA final examination, or they don't score in CA final examination because what they have understood, they are not in a position to write it properly. I'm now in fact tired of seeing papers after papers of unfortunate cases of the students who have not cleared their examination. And when you see their answer sheet, students, you don't have to read the entire paper. You just read that 2 or 3 pages, you come to know the story. And the story is the same. I'm telling you, students. In fact, our student, she is now the head examiner of direct tax. She herself tells me the same thing. The way the answers are being put across, in this case, we don't feel like giving the marks in that scenario. And the problem is this, that, say, as of the numericals are right, but the explanation is either the explanation is not sufficient, or the explanation is what only the students would have known. The examiner doesn't understand what exactly that students have understood, even if their final numericals are right. So what happens? Out of 10 marks, they end up getting 2 or 3 marks. And this is a real problem. And may I say, this is the only problem after 2 or 3 attempts. Of 90% of the students, primary, they are not in a position to communicate properly with the examiner. And the medium of communication, students, we all know. What is the medium of communication primary? It is primarily through the writing part. There is no vivas that you are supposed to speak to the examiner. Yes, you do have an MCQ, 30 marks or so. That is a narrow escape. But still there is a 70 marks that you need to write so as to see through your journey. And even in that 30 marks of MCQ, primary, don't understand that it will be an easy cakewalk. In fact, of whatever is the MCQs of the last 5 years that we have seen, 20 marks of the MCQs, students are in a position to see through it properly. That 10 marks is always nagging. And we always say those nagging MCQs should be left at the last. Why? Because MCQs 1 marks. And you yourself would know that if I just get stuck in those 1 mark or 2 marks of MCQ, then the kind of paper that we have in CA final, which is a bit on the lengthier side, if you get stuck in the MCQs badly, then definitely you will end up attempting only 70 or 75 marks in your paper, which is insufficient to at least score some good marks. And that is the reason why, students, your translation of your answer, the communication that you have in your answer has to be impeccable. What to write and how much to write. This is the ultimate game as for a CFL students. Repeat with me the two things. What to write and how much to write. You master this art, leave CFRL, anything beyond any examination that you want to really get into it, you will crack those exams. What to write and how much to write. At least for CFRL, for the limited journey of CFRL, this is the gospel truth, primary. And this is what you are not here right now, primary, to only learn the subject. You are also here in my class to express the subject. I can tell you stories after stories in some other particular session, primary, and how I ended up getting all India highest indirect tax paper in my own CFL examination. There are a lot of stories that primary I can discuss, go on and on, but this is a limited particular point, students, right now. That you should always be careful. It's not only restricted to understanding the paper, it is about the expressing the paper in the examination. You cannot express it, gone. Every effort is waste, primary. Then what is to whom that you have made yourself understood? For your own self, or to your parents, or to your boss, or to your friends? It has to be ultimately to be expressed to the examiner. And this is an art. And unfortunately, this is where I'm telling you, students, unfortunate is this case. Maximum students are lacking in this. Because I know how they study primary. That's unfortunate irony. Everyone has to learn the hard way. Even if it means giving some attempt, so be it. Anyway, students, let's come back to our discussion. So therefore, I hope that now this is the reason why I made you write this territorial nexus, because it's easy to understand, but it's very difficult to translate. Even I have to literally mark my words, what I'm giving you in your notes. Easy to understand, difficult to express. That is the game, students. Auditing paper. You just check out the auditing paper, students, in this context. Now you will find in group 1, maximum of the failures are coming in auditing. If your FR and FM is fine. Why is it so? Because obviously the ability to express is not there. How do we express? That paper is the game. Now gone are the days wherein people used to just clear by whatever they have understood from their own language, they used to express their language. No, audit speaks in its own way. It has its own way of expression. Unlike the way we express in direct tax. Right now, did you see territorial nexus? This kind of discussion, you will not find it in auditing. Because this concept doesn't apply over there. It applies over here. And hence, this is the way of expressing the things. In auditing, like for example, audit materiality, if I ask you, what is audit materiality? So people say material item is this and that and all. But no, there is a specific language that they are using for audit materiality. What I remember of my golden days of CA final journey, I still remember those statements. An item is material if its misstatement, an item is material if its misstatement affects the economic decision of the user of the financial statement. That is how you write your answers. And if you can write in this way, nobody can fail you in this paper. Primary. If that is how you express the paper, expression is the key. That exactly the point, students. Now, students, coming back on this particular part, territorial nexus, when I'm talking about territorial nexus part, now direct tax I have told you, all of you have understood it. Let me in fact try to draw a parallel with indirect tax over here. In indirect tax, students, please tell me whether you have anything. Is there a territorial nexus which is also there in indirect tax law? Does this concept of territorial nexus, does it exist? If you have studied something or the other, or a little bit of IDT, if not, then maybe leave it aside. But if you have, just think of it. Be a thinker. That is important. In fact, I must tell you, there is no word territorial nexus which is used in any of the section. This is something that we have drawn a principle. What is used in income tax law is this. The word that you are seeing, Mukta, the word that you are seeing is this. That is what section 5 says. The scope. That is what it says. Territorial nexus is something which we have, even the Supreme Court, in their language they use, that what exactly this section is doing, what you have just now read, what it is doing. It is talking about territorial nexus. That look, for a resident, because the nexus is with the person, therefore the world income is taxable under the Act. So see how the interpretation is drawn by the court, that look, for a resident, this language is not there in the Act. Act says, if you are a resident, world income is taxable. Why the world income is taxable? Act doesn't say that. That why is missing. So why the world income is taxable? The court says what? That look, with a resident, the nexus is with the person itself. And because the nexus is with the person, we look no further. And hence the world income is taxable. But when it comes to a non-resident, the nexus is not with the person. And therefore it is only the income which that non-resident has either accrued in India or which he has received in India. Only that is a category of his income which will be chargeable to tax under the Act. So this nexus theory is the why. Why this for a resident world income is taxable? Why for a non-resident this two category of income is taxable? That why has been explained by the Supreme Court. So on a similar lines, in IDT, do we have such territorial nexus theory? You don't have any section of territorial nexus, but that why is what primary. Do we have any such thing in IDT? Answer is yes, we have. Believe me, you're talking about a taxation law. And if you're talking about a taxation law, you cannot proceed further. Students, if you are talking about a taxation law, you cannot proceed further unless and until you have established a nexus with India. Unless there is a nexus under the Act. You said, but IDT, sir, how the nexus is established? So some who have not knowing about it, for them at least. See, in IDT, there is no residential status. There is no resident, non-resident concept. Because in income tax law, the income tax is on the total income of a person. The person can be a resident or a non-resident. It is a personal tax. And hence the emphasis is on the person, who you are. Are you a resident or you are a non-resident? So the income tax law is a tax on the total income of a person. It's a personal tax. IDT is not a personal tax. And the very fact that IDT is not a personal tax, so therefore the significance of who the person is has got no relevance. So therefore the concept of resident or non-resident doesn't arise. Obviously for limited person, we have got some special concept of non-resident that they have touched upon for e-commerce and all the stuff. But otherwise, the concept of resident and non-resident doesn't arise because it's not a charge on person. It is a charge on the transaction, on the supply, on the event. It is not a charge on the person. And so if it is not a charge on the person, it is a charge on the supply or it is a charge on the event. So how the nexus is established? So there students, you will not find who has earned, who has supplied. Who has supplied has got no relevance. Unlike in the context of income tax law, who has earned the income. In IDT, who has supplied the goods has got no relevance. What is relevant in IDT, students, is where the goods or services has been consumed. That's the reason why IDT, heard of it? Destination based consumption tax. Heard of that or not? This phrase, consumption based tax or destination based consumption tax. So where it is consumed, on that basis the charge is attracted. If it is consumed in India, taxable territory, then yes, the charge of the IDT will be raised. And if it is consumed outside India, no GST. In fact, even in the customs law, if you do the export, there is a duty drawback. There is a chapter on duty drawback. What is the duty drawback? Why duty drawback is given? Because the moment you do an export, whatever is the duty that has been charged has to be drawn back, has to be refunded. Why refunded? Because these goods are not consumed in India, it is consumed outside India. So whatever the duty charge on the goods has to be refunded. And the duty will be charged in that country which country? Where the goods would be finally be consumed. That is how the customs law also says. GST also says the same thing. If the consumption, that is the reason why. In fact, in here, the CGST, SGST, it's very important to understand which state the consumption is taking place. And therefore, it is that state SGST would be charged. The consumption where it is taking place, where the consumption has taken place, on that basis, the charge is attracted. That is the nexus. The where will decide the nexus. The nexus. If that where happens to be in India or that state, then the charge is attracted in India or that state, as the case may be. If that where is outside India, charge is not attracted. So here in income tax, to conclude now, in income tax, the emphasis is upon who has earned. Personal tax. Who has earned. On that basis, the charge is attracted. In IDT, who has supplied or who has undertaken the event, not at all relevant. Where it is supplied, where it is consumed, is what decides the charge. That establishes the nexus. If that where happens to be in India, then the nexus is established and the charge is attracted. So supplier is outside India, receiver is in India, he has supplied the goods in India, charge is attracted, and you will find reverse charge mechanism is getting applicable over here. Through an RCM, the charge gets attracted, subject to some exemptions and all. Exemption is not our discussion at all. Because the consumption is happening in India, therefore the charge is attracted. Now to facilitate for administrative purpose, they have introduced the reverse charge mechanism. I hope that every one of you are clear with this. So will you find a residential status concept in IDT? No. And why you will not find it? Primarily because the charge is not on the person, but it is on the transaction or it is on the event. Whereas in income tax, the charge is on whom? It is on the person. I hope that students, every one of you are clear with this one. Everyone in this context. So with that, students, we will take a break and then we will meet across in the next particular part.